I want to start off this morning with showing you a video. This video, I think, sort of just really introduces this message today better than anything else I can really come up with, because this is really fascinating, actually, of how this has worked. And so I want to take something physical that's happened here and talk about it, how it's spiritual. We're going to be continuing in this series, Heart Check, so you'll see why this has to do with that here as we move into this video. So let's watch it together.
Marriage vows in an open field under Alaska's mountain sky. A dream wedding for bride Becky Turney. But wildest dreams never imagined what would happen just before I do.
We have a seat saved for our son Tristan, who couldn't make it.
A seat saved for Becky's late son, who died at age 19. Tristan, an organ donor who gave life to several others.
One of those young men who received his heart is here today.
A stunning surprise at the altar, meeting the young man now alive because of her son's heart. Embracing a stranger, but one who carries a precious part of her.
He physically brought my son's heart to my wedding. It's just amazing.
Becky's husband, Kelly, planned the surprise gift after Jacob made contact online months before.
Building that relationship with Jacob has probably been one of the most amazing parts of this whole process.
Jacob, born with a congenital heart defect, had his first transplant at 2 years old. After a heart attack at 20, he needed a new one to survive.
I'm very aware of how much of a gift that this heart is, and that, not everyone gets a gift like this.
And Becky says her wedding gift, to know Jacob, will keep giving for the rest of her life.
It's incredible to get to be a part of his life and watch Tristan's legacy live on.
Days after the wedding, Jacob seems one of the family, stirring memories of a life lost, making new ones.
Huh?
Yeah, that's so cool.
With a life saved. Katie Beck, NBC News, Wasilla, Alaska.
I don't know. That's incredible. That's incredible. Giving your heart that way and allowing this mother to experience just a part of her son who passed away when he was 19. I just find that fascinating. So last week, what we did, we talked about some things that go against our heart. These are risk factors that if we don't deal with, and we kind of keep moving into and we allow them to affect our hearts, they only do damage to us. And they clog our arteries, so to speak. And that's guilt, anger, greed, and jealousy. And we kind of dived into those last week. And so I just want to bring them back to your attention here. Guilt says, I owe you. So I owe you an apology. And so what I want to do is I want to run and I want to hide. But the way that we take care of those risk factors is we confess. And then anger, where we get angry with people, is say, you owe me something. You owe me. And the way to do that is to forgive, to have a healthy heart. And then greed says, I owe me. So everything becomes about me, and I want to consume, and everything that's out there is mine to consume. But the way that we combat that is to be generous and to give. And then there's jealousy, and sometimes in life we think life owes me, or even better yet, more pinpoint to that is God owes me. And then how we deal with that is we celebrate. So I just wanted to talk about those things right now as we kind of move in towards the message this morning, because if we don't deal with those things, this is going to be very difficult for us to share our hearts together. So today we're going to be talking about what it looks like to share our hearts. Back in the Old Testament, in Ezekiel, there was a time when the Israelites had completely walked away from God, disobeyed God, and they were in captivity. They had been exiled, and they were following idols, and they were paying the penalty of those choices that they made. There was consequences for that. But in this writing, Ezekiel writes down a prophecy that is going to happen in the future. And I just want to share that with you because it fits so well with what we're going to talk about today. This is what Ezekiel says, and it's about the words of God coming out. It says, "For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. This is a promise of God. It's going to happen. And then he says, I will give you a new heart, a transplant, just like a video we saw. A new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. So today, what I want to do, I like doing these things because I think it helps us remember. Obviously, we have a table up here, so don't worry. You're not going to get thrown into this. I don't need any volunteers, but I do have some props here for us. You ready? It's stuck. I'm going to spill it. Oh, this is baptism water too, so I don't know what's in here. All right, here we go. So, this is my analogy this morning. And when Ezekiel's talking about a heart of stone, I want you to picture a sponge and a pail of water. And I just want you to think about this. What happens to a sponge when it's just been sitting around for a long, long time and it doesn't get used? You hear this? It's just brittle. It is caked and it stinks, it's sour, and it smells. So now I want to bring this to us. What does this got to do with my heart? Our hearts are like a sponge. If we continually just soak in things, and this is how we do it. For a lot of us, Sunday is our soak day. Sunday's our soak day. This is all we get from God today. We're just going to soak and soak it in. And then we're going to come back next week and we're going to just do it again and soak. But then we kind of go through the life, but we really, through our lives and through the week, but we're just soaking in all the time. For some of us, we even go to further extents. What we love to do is we love Bible study. Bible study is so important. And so we soak all this knowledge, as much knowledge as we can get. And we focus and just start to really soak it all in. And then some of us, we just love praise and harmony. And so we listen to songs of worship and we fill our minds with this character of God and how he's to be worshiped. And we have all this stuff and we just continually soak our hearts up with these things. And the thing is that these are not bad things at all. They are really good things. But the problem is that if we keep them to ourselves, things start to stink. They get to become hard and they become useless in our lives. So when we think about this, I just want to paint this analogy here for you. The truth is, this can be us sometimes. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 8, verse 1 says something really unique. He says, but while knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that strengthens the church. That's the NLT version. While knowledge makes us feel important, it's love that actually strengthens the church. Because what typically happens when we are soakers is that eventually we begin to stink. Because I'll tell you what, COVID has moved a lot of churches to online worship. And so you have an endless stream of better preachers out there, people with many, many letters after their name. And you can feed yourself with that. And you can get podcasts and feed yourself with information. And I think I do it. I love it because I love to continue to learn. But the problem is when we keep it to ourselves, things begin to stink. And then also we begin to complain. And then we start to think that the church is not meeting my needs. And this is a problem with our hearts when we think it's about us. And so being right matters more than relationships. Because we've got all this knowledge and we found these new loopholes, so to speak, in the Word of God, if you want. And so we continually are trying to figure things out, but we keep it all for ourselves. And this is a problem with our hearts because we become less graceful. We will actually become less generous. And then we get the older brother syndrome. What's the older brother syndrome? Well, I want to tell you this. In Luke chapter 15, there is a parable that Jesus is sharing. And Jesus shares this parable. Some call it the parable of the prodigal son. Some call it the parable of the two lost sons. Some, and I think it's better this way, call it the parable of the good father. Or in my version today, when I was reading it, says the compassionate father. There's something about the father in this parable that's incredible. And so here is this story of a father with two sons. One son's getting all the rules right. He's doing everything he needs to do. He's checking everything off the list. But then there's this younger son, and he's tired of all the rules. He's tired of living in his father's house, and he asks his father for his share of the inheritance. And so the father is such a good father. He actually allows him to choose and says, okay, I will honor your choice. And he gives the son his share of the inheritance. And the son is like, wow, this newfound freedom, what am I going to do with this newfound freedom? And so he goes out, he takes in his inheritance, and it says he went off to a foreign city. All I can think of is Las Vegas. I have never been to Las Vegas, but it has a tagline that's called Sin City for a reason, I think. Now, if you're looking for sin, you may find it. I know there's lots of things to do in Las Vegas, and I'm not putting it down. But if you're looking for sin, it's probably one of the best places in the world to go and find it. And so let's pretend this son takes all his wealth, and he goes off to Las Vegas. And he just spends it in wild parties, and he spends it all for himself. He's got lots of friends now. And he's continuing just to spend it on prostitutes, on alcohol, on drugs, and wild living. And it's not long. As he has all these friends, his money starts to dwindle, and he doesn't have much left. And so he starts to wonder, why are my friends leaving me? They're not as faithful as he thought. He gets to a point where he has no money left, and he's hungry. He can't feed himself because he has nothing left. He finds a farmer. And he goes to the farmer's place, and the farmer allows him to go and feed his pigs. He goes and feeds pigs. Now, for a Jewish boy, for a Jewish son, pigs don't mix. For us Canadians, we don't understand this. We love our bacon. But back then, pigs were unclean. But here's this son who had everything in his father's household, has gone off and finds himself eating what the pigs eat, or longing to eat what the pigs eat. And so he has this idea. He has this idea of, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to my father, because even the servants that serve my father eat much better than this. And so he starts thinking of this plan. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell my father that I am unworthy to be called your son, and I want to work with the servants. And so he's devising this plan. He's walking back home, and his father's got binoculars, and he sees his son from a far distance and can't believe it. The father is ecstatic that his son is making his way back home, and his father runs to him. Now, this is something in Jewish culture you don't see. Elders of that culture don't run. But this father runs back to this son that was lost. And as the son meets the father, he's going through this speech he rehearsed. And he's saying, Father, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. And as he's getting those words out, the father is saying, Servant, go and get the fatted calf, kill it. We're going to have a party tonight. My son who was lost is home. Get the robe, put it on him, get him the royal ring, and put it on his finger. And I see he doesn't have sandals. Get some sandals and put them on his feet. My son who was lost is home. Well, the party begins. The party begins. And as this party goes on, the older son this younger son's brother is out in the field doing what he's doing, and he hears a celebration happening. And he's questioning what is going on. And he meets a servant, one of the servants of the household, and says, "What's happening?" And he says, "Your younger brother is home. He came back, and they're having a celebration." Well, this is where we pick up the conversation today. I want you to think of the heart of the older brother here for a second. And I just want to see if maybe we can see where the heart of this older brother lies. Is it a heart of flesh, or is it a heart of stone? Just watch. The older brother in Luke 15:28 says, "The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answers his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you. And I never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends.'" Now, I just want to stop here for a second, because I think this is so important. We talked on Wednesday nights about church history and different things like that. One of the things that came up is we all love formulas, right? We want to get the formula right so that we know we're good with God. And there's 5 steps to salvation. And sometimes what we do is we miss out on Jesus altogether and the relationship that really God wants with us, because we've made it all about a formula. And this is the problem. I believe this is much like the older brother, because he got all the rules right. He's getting all the rules right, but is his heart right? Is the relationship with his father right? No, it's just as bad. It's just as bad. He says, "I've been slaving for you day in, day out, and I never disobeyed your orders." Checklist faith. And this is what the father says. The next thing the father says is, "But when this son," this is still the brother, and I love how he says this, "But this son of yours," not my brother, he's a son of yours, "who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home. You kill the fattened calf for him." And this is the father's words, the good father, the compassionate father, our father. "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours." Everything I have is yours. I find that fascinating. Do you know that you, being adopted into the family of God, have everything that the Father has is at your disposal to use? It's yours. And I think sometimes what happens is we think if we get all the steps right, then God owes us something. And that's a problem. But here, the father's trying to get his older brother or the older son to understand is that you're in the family. Everything I have is yours. And I believe that we become a lot like the older brother when we start to think that we have to measure up in some way. And I think that what we do is we try to earn God's grace and His mercy and His love and His favor. Why can't we just love the Father and enjoy the relationship that we have? That should move our hearts to not become hearts of stone. And so this is what happens now. I believe this is what I wrestle with the most. My identity gets all soaked up in the sins I haven't committed instead of the forgiveness I so desperately need. Does that make sense to you? My identity gets all soaked up in the sins that I have not committed. That's where I start to judge. That's where I start to think I've got more check marks than you do. But instead, I need to be looking at the forgiveness I so desperately need, and the family that I've been invited into is God's family. And everything I have is at my disposal because of God, and it's to be used to glorify and honor Him. So what's the remedy? What's the remedy for keeping our hearts from becoming like sponges? A good squeeze. So I'm going to ask you, Are you keeping everything for yourself? Or is it time for a good squeeze? I believe this is really important because this is what the writer of Proverbs says. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered. We just need to make sure that we're going back to the Father to get soaked up. But what we're doing is we're taking what we're learning and we're pouring into others. And we need to give our hearts a good squeeze. Our hearts were not meant to be hearts of stone just for ourselves. They were meant to be shared with others. But we can't do it when we have guilt, pride, anger, and jealousy in our hearts. We just can't do it. So I want to just give you 5 things that I think are really important for us to understand. How can we use our hearts to bless others? Here's the first thing I want you to remember. So going from living from a heart of flesh that Ezekiel talks about to a heart that is soft and one that pours out into others. This is what I believe we need to do. First thing, we need to have Jesus as our model. Jesus has to be our model or our example. In Mark chapter 10, verses 45, it says this, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And he did not, and gave his life as a ransom for many." Now, he did not consider equality with God something to be held on to. That's in Philippians. He actually made himself a servant. And one of the things he does is he continues to pour into others. But he takes a wash basin on the night he's about to be betrayed. And he shows his disciples what it looks like to pour into others. And he says, "I'm going to wash your feet." And he takes on the very role of nature of a servant, and he washes the disciples' feet. Peter says, "No, Lord, never." And he says, "If you don't let me wash your feet, you can have nothing to do with me." And he says, "Okay, wash my whole body. Your body's clean. Just be a servant." The second thing we do is we become least. When we become least, we can pour into others. Whoever wants to be first must take last place and be a servant of everyone else. See, God's kingdom is such an upside-down kingdom. It does not make sense in our old hearts. Our old hearts that are all about soaking will never understand this new kingdom. The way we've been created and designed in the image of God is to pour out into others. And we search for happiness by soaking everything in. And we become hard and we become brittle by looking for happiness. But Jesus is saying, if you want true living, true life, pour into others. And so what we do is we love others. It becomes about loving others. Jesus, this is the night that he's about to be betrayed. It's fascinating in the book of John. There's so much in the book of John. 3 years is in the book of John, up until around 14. Chapter 14, it goes to one night through 17. But it's fascinating here. He says, "There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for his friends." And Jesus hasn't even gone to the cross yet. He's about to go to the cross that night. And he's saying, there is no greater love than for you to lay down your life for your friends. And the fascinating thing about this is that Jesus even went to the cross for his enemies. How do we love others? Well, I tell you, if we have the older brother syndrome, it's very difficult to love others because we're focusing everything about trying to earn God's love for us. And God is saying, why even question my love for you? Can't you see what I've done for you? You've been adopted into the family, and everything I have is yours. Now go and love people the way I have loved you. And the other thing is others before yourself. Oh, we love this one. Others before yourself. Squeezing into others. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Okay, this doesn't work in the world's economy at all. But in God's economy, it works. See, we've been created to serve one another. We've been created to rule and co-rule together. And we do that by loving others and putting others before ourselves. One thing I want to share about these buckets. This is God's bucket. This is God's bucket. God's bucket doesn't empty. Unfortunately, in my analogy today, it does empty. But God's bucket never empties. And we can always go to the bucket of God and get filled up, but don't stop there. Pour into others. But don't do this. This will completely wreck your relationships. When you think the soaking happens in this bucket. When you go to others to be filled up, and you want to have good friends in your life, but if they're sucking the life out of you, you need to go to the other bucket. Because this bucket doesn't eventually drain, but this bucket continually stays full. And the last thing I just want to share with you before we move to communion is this. You're gifted to serve. You have been gifted to serve. Unfortunately, if we make everything just about a Sunday, if we just make everything about a Sunday, and this is where we get all our sustenance and we soak up everything. See, we make serving just about what we do on a Sunday, about who's up front or anything like that. This is not what it's about. It's about our everyday life, and are we pouring into others and bringing kingdom here on earth by the way we live out our lives. You've been gifted to serve. This is Peter, the one who wouldn't allow Christ to wash his feet. And Christ says, listen, Peter, if I can't wash your feet, you can have nothing to do with me. This is his words 3 years later, or 30 years later, sorry. He says, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. So the question I want to leave with you today, what's your gift? What's your gift? And maybe for some of us, we don't know what that is. And I get that. I totally understand that. That's why you need to come back next week, because we're going to dig into that next week as to what that gift may be. There's a question that you can ask that I believe will help you and help determine what that gift may be. But if you are relying specifically on the church and relying on others, it's going to be very difficult for you to discover what that gift is, because you will always continually be working from a hard heart, because people cannot give you a soft heart. God wants to put a new heart in you. And he wants to put a new spirit. And I love that wording about the living water. He wants to fill us, and he does that with his spirit.